You know that feeling, maybe after a big meeting or a really crowded party
Mm.
where you just feel completely wiped
Oh,
out.
yeah, like you need to just go hide somewhere quiet for like a week.
Exactly. Or maybe you've always, really valued your quiet time, but felt like the world mostly cheers for the loud, outgoing types.
Hmm. There's definitely that pressure, that kind of um, societal script that says outgoing is better or, more successful.
Right. And it can leave people who thrive in quieter spaces feeling a bit off, like they need to change something
Yeah,
fundamental about themselves,
yeah, like they're not quite hitting the mark.
which is exactly why today we're doing a deep dive into something that pushes back on that. We're
Yeah.
exploring the power within introversion,
Yes, and we're going to unpack the work of Dr. Laurie Helgoe. She's a clinical psychologist.
right? Focusing on her book, Introvert Power, Why Your Inner Life is Your Hidden Strength, and some of her other writings, too.
Her mission here really is to get into Dr. Helgo's main ideas. Like, how does that inner life actually become a strength?
And what can we learn from her to maybe challenge those biases?
Mhm.
The ones in a society that often feels built, frankly, for extroverts.
So this deep dive is really for you, the listener, using the material we've got to explore these ideas and see what clicks.
Okay, let's get into it. First off, who is Dr. Laurie Helgoe?
Well, the sources say she's a clinical psychologist, obviously, but also an author, speaker, educator.
And she's an associate professor of behavioral sciences at Ross University School of Medicine. That definitely signals a serious academic approach, doesn't it?
It does. And her work isn't just focused on introversion. Looking at her other books.
Yeah, I saw titles like The Complete Idiot's Guide to Raising Boys.
Right. And the anxiety answer book.
Yeah.
So she's applying psychological insights pretty broadly. It's not just one niche.
That makes sense. And her works clearly made waves. She did that Psychology Today cover story, Revenge of the Introverts.
Yes. Which really says something about how she's reframing the whole conversation.
And she's been featured in places like the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post.
So definitely a recognized expert. It's not just, casual observation. She's digging into personality, the psychology of desire, which ties right into this idea of introvert power.
And the book itself, Introvert Power, it's significant that it's in a second edition, right?
Yeah.
Updated and expanded.
Yeah, that really suggests it's got staying power. It obviously resonated with people and continues to be relevant.
Absolutely. And it's relevant to a lot of people. The material mentions this striking statistic.
Oh, the one about more than half of Americans being introverts.
Exactly. More than half. So we're not talking about some small group here. This could easily be most people listening.
Which just highlights how important her central idea is, that introverts get energy and power from, well, reflection and solitude.
It flies right in the face of that common idea that energy has to come from being out there constantly stimulated.
Right. And the book's goal, according to the sources, is pretty clear. Help introverts live fulfilling lives by understanding themselves.
And challenge those ingrained extrovert-focused biases in our culture. It uses that phrase, a groundbreaking call for an introvert renaissance.
Yeah, an introvert renaissance. I like that.
Me too. It feels like reclaiming something, doesn't it? Something valuable that's been kind of pushed aside.
Definitely. She positions it as an alternative to what she calls deep-seated extroversion training.
Which is basically all that pressure, subtle or not, to just act more like an extrovert all the time.
Exactly. She's saying, look, you don't need fixing. You just need to understand your own operating system and have the tools to thrive.
So how does she say introverts can actually do that? What are the core ideas, the practical strategies in the book?
Well, she really focuses on showing introverts how to reclaim those natural sources of energy. It's not just theory.
Right, it's actionable stuff.
Yeah, like she talks a lot about claiming private space, and it's framed strategically, not just like, oh, having a den.
More like consciously setting up boundaries.
Precisely. Creating the conditions for that essential solitude needed to, recharge and process things.
Claiming private space. And didn't she also mention carving out time specifically to think?
Yes. Seeing reflection as a productive activity in itself, not just idle time or putting things off.
Recognizing that for introverts, that deep processing takes dedicated time, often alone.
Mm-hmm. And she even suggests, interestingly, bringing a slower tempo into daily life.
A slower tempo,
Right.
like consciously pushing back against the constant rush.
Kind of, yeah. Allowing for more deliberate thought, less just reacting on impulse.
Okay, that makes sense. What about dealing with people? You mentioned creating breaks in conversations.
That's a really important one. It's not about avoiding social interaction altogether.
No, it's about managing your energy within those interactions.
Exactly. Taking short breaks, maybe stepping away for a moment during a long event, or setting boundaries in relationships so you get that recovery time.
And then there's dealing with the classic challenges,
Mm.
parties, interruptions, crowds.
Right. She offers actual strategies for navigating those things without ending up totally depleted.
It all seems to circle back to those core messages, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Quiet is might, solitude is strength, introversion is power.
It's a powerful reframing. It moves introversion away from being seen as like a lack of something.
And it's interesting how these core ideas pop up in her other work too, like those Psychology Today articles.
Yeah, where introvert power is described as food for the inner life. That's a nice way to put it.
And the titles of those articles show the breadth of it. Things like The Art of Being Too Sensitive.
Which maybe reframes sensitivity not as a flaw, but as deep processing, right?
Could be. And that other one, Don't Just Do It, challenging the idea of immediate action.
That title alone really stands out in our, hyper-productive world. How does she argue for pausing?
Well, it seems she argues that for many introverts, thinking things through first isn't delaying, it's essential for generating better, more considered ideas or actions. The power of the pause.
Makes sense. And she explores solitude, too, from different angles, like solitude, the new way to celebrate.
Right. Even suggesting New Year's Eve alone could be perfectly valid, maybe even better for some than a big party.
That's definitely challenging a norm. And she even looks at when solitude isn't chosen, like in forced introspection, appealing fantasy or horror story.
Uh-huh. Exploring the potential discomfort when introspection isn't voluntary.
And she connects it all to culture, too, mentioning Introvert Isle about her trip to Japan.
Oh, right, looking at what a more introverted society might look like compared to ours.
Yeah, seeing how personality traits can be valued differently depending on the cultural context.
And she even applies these personality insights into areas you might not expect, like narcissism.
Looking at things like the fragile bully or the stress of entitlement, using personality as a lens for wider behaviors.
And questioning things like why a kid has to be into team sports in that no team no piece. It's fascinating how she traces the influence of personality everywhere.
It really is.
So pulling this all together, what's the takeaway for you, the listener? This deep dive into Dr. Helgoe's work, it really gives you a different way to understand personality, maybe your own.
Yeah, not just about how you act, but about where your energy comes from and how you use it. It highlights the strength in things like quiet and reflection, qualities often overlooked.
Or even undervalued, right? In a society that tends to celebrate the outward stuff more.
Exactly. And it offers those practical tools, the strategies from the book we mentioned, for navigating a world that might not always feel like it was designed with introverts in mind.
It's really about empowerment through self-understanding, embracing your nature as a source of strength, not weakness.
And you can see how much that resonates. The material mentions those quotes about the book.
Oh yeah, like it changed my life.
And even the Bhagavad Gita for introverts. I mean, that's pretty strong feedback.
It really speaks to how validating it must be for people who felt, maybe for a long time, like they were wired wrong or needed to be more outgoing.
It shifts the perspective entirely. Introversion isn't a limitation. It's a source of strength and insight.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, the key point from Dr. Helgoe seems clear. Introversion isn't a deficit. It's not something to overcome.
Right. It's a distinct source of power, found in that inner life, in reflection, in solitude.
And her work offers both the insight, the why, and the practical tools, the how, to embrace that strength.
Right.
And maybe push back a little against those societal biases.
It really challenges us to think differently about where energy and power come from, for ourselves and maybe even for society.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over. If quiet is might and solitude really is strength, how might a deeper appreciation for this introvert power change things?
Yeah, how might it change how we collaborate or who we see as leaders or even just how we structure our workplaces and communities?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.